Have you heard of the Grabber? I killed him.
Black Phone 2 just hit theaters this past weekend, and it's already making bigger waves than its predecessor. BP2 brought in $26.5 million here in the States, which is just shy of $4 million more than the original's domestic opening weekend. Worldwide total is $42 million against a $30 million budget. This icy sequel is still a long way from profitability, however, it needs to hit the $75 million mark to achieve that. But it is certainly igniting a fiery excitement as word of mouth spreads. The critics may not have been super hot on this one, but the audience certainly loved it. With Blumhouse's focus seemingly in the sequel market the most these days, it begs the question of will a Black Phone 3 happen? I think there's a lot of directions this franchise could go in next, including something that jumps from an in-universe short film created by Scott Derrickson between making Black Phone 1 and 2. So let's talk a little bit about the future of the Black Phone franchise. Hey everybody, I'm Killjoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. If you like talking about upcoming horror flicks as much as I do, then make sure to like this video and subscribe for more wild theories just like this one. Also, the best way to support this page is by becoming a Patreon supporter or channel member, where you'll get bonus review videos each week. Thank you to my channel members and patrons. Now let's get into this video. I gotta start this off by saying I never needed the Black Phone to become a franchise after that first standalone movie, but I am glad that it has. In my review for the sequel, I correctly predicted that this would be a polarizing release after getting to see it early. The online reaction to Black Phone 2 does not shock me in the least. It's not a total departure from what was going on in that first film, but it's different enough to kind of shock people who were fans of that original film. We've thrown a little dash of Elm Street into the pot now, and it has a different flavor, that's for sure. While I still prefer the more emotional and grounded story of the original film, the Grabber cosplaying as a frozen over Freddy Krueger in the sequel was incredibly cool. As a huge Nightmare on Elm Street fan who wants to see another movie in that franchise one day knocking on every piece of wood in my entire apartment here, this sort of scratched the itch. I'm gonna start campaigning for Scott Derrickson to do the next Nightmare on Elm Street film after this film, that is for sure. After the 2021 movie's conclusion of the Grabber getting the cold death he deserved, I definitely didn't feel the need for a sequel to that film. This unnecessary yet pretty damn fun sequel, however, opened up the floodgates for many more of these things to be made. Before I go any further, I just want to put a big ol' nasty spoiler warning on this video moving forward. We're gonna get into some spoilers for Black Phone 2. So if you haven't seen that movie yet, go check it out and then come on back. Like seriously, stop watching. This one is totally worth your time in the theaters. Go watch it. Black Phone 2 shows Finney answering multiple phones throughout that only he can hear ringing. It's ghosts from the other side likely asking him for help. Finney's sister Gwen is also having terrifying dreams about the kids who were murdered before the Grabber started to terrorize their hometown. I think this potentially opens up the franchise to infinite possibilities. If they're interested in that kind of thing, let me explain. You could write in that the Grabber went on killing sprees in all different parts of Colorado or even the surrounding area before he trapped Finney in that basement. Gwen gets more visions of ghosts as Finney gets more ominous calls from the dead that need their help. The Grabber could come after them once again as they try to locate bodies in an all-new setting. What could make this direction different from Black Phone 2, because let's be honest, that sounds like the exact same movie we all just watched in the theaters, is that you could kind of follow Finney and Gwen at a different stage in their life. This seems to be a big motivation behind making Black Phone 2, according to director Scott Derrickson. He's described the original Black Phone as this like middle school coming of age tale, where this is more of like a high school flick. That is especially noticeable in the difference in age of the characters from then to now. We watch these characters and actors grow up in between movies, almost like the Stranger Things kids and how they're fucking 50 now. That's a good base for keeping the fans interested in showing up for another film. I want to see what these guys are doing in the late 80s now, opposed to the early 80s and late 70s. Black Phone 3 could be a college movie, for instance. Now, another way that you can make a Black Phone 3, which would feel a little more like Black Phone 2 in the sense that it's a little more ambitious, a little more of a swing for the fences, and also a little different than what we got before, is that, and bear with me now, you could introduce new villains and protagonists. This is something that the series has technically already done too, and you might not even be aware of of it. More on that in a little bit. Blumhouse could set this franchise up like one of its flagship series that is currently filming entry number 6, the Insidious franchise. Instead of going total Nightmare on Elm Street, this series could be a marriage of the two biggest Dream Demon series out there, Insidious and A Nightmare on Elm Street. You could have different crazed killers from beyond the grave haunting our clairvoyant characters who look to unearth still buried bodies to take away their supernatural power. New ghost kids, new killers, maybe even new characters, even though I think I really like Mason Timms and Madeline McGraw. I don't want to give them up by any means. I really want to follow these same characters again. Maybe they could be going after an all-new killer in some other part of the world, helping out some other kids whose souls are trapped in limbo, essentially. This could work for a number of reasons. The price tag on Black Phone 2 was nearly twice as much as the original, considering Ethan Hawke's return as the Grabber. Any big-name actor like that is going to ask for more money for a sequel to a hit. Getting a less expensive actor, who isn't lesser in talent of course, to portray a new killer could drive the budget down a little bit. That way there's not only more killers to conquer here, but also profit margins. I think Jason Blum really liked that last point. This feels like such a given as well, considering the fact that these movies take place during prime serial killer golden age during the late 70s and now 80s. You could come up with a whole slurry of different faux serial killers for Finney and Gwen to tackle in new films. If you really wanted to and had a good idea, of course. Don't just pump out some gray slop, Blumhouse. Too many franchises are starting to do that. The only problem with this direction is that the impetus for Black Phone 2 was the personal connection that the Grabber had to the Blake family. So how would these main characters be involved for future sequels that involve different kinds of killers? Someone who maybe doesn't have a personal connection to both Finney and Gwen. I mean, you could just invent new characters who can also talk to ghosts in one way, shape, or form, or also have messed up scary dreams. The franchise has technically already done this. We're getting to that point now, baby. Scott Derrickson's contribution to the anthology horror film VHS 85 is called Dream Kill. It's his segment that stars Scott Derrickson's real-life son, Dashiell Derrickson. Gunther's camera records his cosmic dreams that show a crazed serial killer going after different people in his town. The interesting thing about all of this is it shows the killings multiple days before they happen. If that sounds a lot like Gwen's situation in Black Phone 2 to you, well, that's probably because Gunther is her cousin. That's revealed in a little throwaway line of dialogue by Gunther's father in the segment. Spoilers for Dream Kill if you haven't seen VHS 85 already, but Gunther's father, played by James Ransome, who interestingly is also the brother character in the Black Phone movies, is revealed to be the killer. Gunther guns him down during the climax of the short, ending his reign of terror. And here's the absolutely wild thing about this short. Black Phone 2 technically takes place in 1982, 4 years after the events of the original. The title of this particular VHS entry is 85, meaning that it's 3 years after the events of Black Phone 2. So technically the events of this short don't fuck with anything established in the Black Phone universe already. So you have some options if you're Scott Derrickson here. You can literally introduce Gunther into the story for the next movie, Gwen and Finney's cousin. That makes sense, they're family, that's why he would be part of this. Probably not a ghost version of James Ransome's character, however, as that would get really confusing with the whole dual character thing there. The point being here is that the franchise has already introduced us to new characters who also have these weird paranormal powers. It wouldn't be so far-fetched to open up this franchise to more lost kids in limbo and more serial killers who are still finding ways to hurt people from beyond the grave. I would go so far as to say that one of the weakest things about Black Phone 2 is the whole personal connection with the mom. I think it's way more interesting if a serial killer from beyond the grave simply doesn't want the bodies to be uncovered. This new killer just wants his putrid sins to be preserved on Earth and fights back against Finney and Gwen for that simple reason alone. To a serial killer, that's like smelting down their gold trophies. If they were, as the Grabber described in the latest film, nothing but the sins they committed on Earth, wouldn't they protect what they still have of themselves at all costs? It's a bit of pride and selfishness that these evil souls freezing over in hell would be motivated by, opposed to a slightly far-fetched familial connection. I think that VHS segment alone proves that this franchise can exist beyond its already established killer. It's totally a risk to suggest this, a total leap of faith, but wasn't Black Phone 2 already that in the first place?
Totally.
And look at those box office numbers we were talking about at the beginning of this video. It's paying off. People love when Scott Derrickson does the Super 8 footage thing. And hey, if you still want to get the grabber in there because Blumhouse is pushing for this guy to be an icon, you could do what the Insidious franchise does at the end of almost all of their movies. The lipstick demon pops up for a little jump scare cameo. Same thing could happen with the grabber here. He could be brought back by whatever supernatural killer is hanging out with us so that he would have a helping hand. Maybe this killer understands that many hands make light work. I am down for another continuation in this franchise as long as Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill are involved. Speaking of Derrickson, he recently spoke to Variety on if he would make a Black Phone 3, to which he responded, "What I can say is that my attitude towards a sequel is that there's really no justification for making a sequel unless you are genuinely attempting to make a movie that's better than the first movie you're making a sequel to. If you're going to make a third one, it needs to be better than the second one, which is better than the first one." Very few films do that. Looking back on the history of cinema, I think Sam Raimi's Evil Dead trilogy and George Romero's Night of the Living Dead trilogy are probably the only two trilogies of movies where they're all three great movies and get progressively better. What would be important to me in considering any ideas is that it's not just a retread, and that we don't feel like we're seeing, oh, now we established this new rule for the grabber, so let's just do that again. That's the only thing I couldn't do. That's why I think moving into the territory of, well, here's a brand new killer for our characters to tackle would totally work. The grabber was not created to be a dream demon, so to say. They decided to spin it that way for the sequel, and I think they made something really special, something that I think Nightmare on Elm Street fans can really bite into, really chew on. But could they, from the ground up, create a guy who totally fits this mold, maybe even a little better than the grabber? I think with that approach and the right execution, of course, you could make a trilogy where it's arguable that each movie gets better than the last. What do you guys think about more Black Phone movies on the horizon, and what would you want from a third film in this franchise? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you all again for watching. Please subscribe, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.